Hello and welcome to this tutorial for the board game Tekhenu. Once you know how to play it, it makes sense. But this game has some steps that you'll definitely need the back of the rulebook for when you first play it. Still, to give you a good sense of how it goes, allow me to explain it to you. You are going to play 16 rounds and then the game is over. Whoever has the most points wins the game. You get some of your points during your turn, some points during scoring moments in the game, and a few bonus points all the way at the end. But after 16 rounds, the game ends, and if you have the most points, you are the winner. One round is when every player has had one turn. So basically you get 16 turns in the whole game. But this game has phases. Let me explain those first. When every player has had a turn, you look at your own player board to see if you have 2 dice on it. If you don't, just do another round. Every player takes another turn. If you do have 2 dice on it, then you turn the obelisk 1 space. You have this small arrow on this disc. It points at one of these lines. Just turn it to the next line. Then you take new dice from the bag to place on the board, and you make sure every die is on the right space. And then you go for another round. Next, as soon as every player has had a turn and you all have 4 dice on the board, you get another phase. First, you turn the obelisk again, but before you place new dice, you first all have to do something else. The dice on your board are placed on this scale. You've got the good side and the bad side. You have to try to keep it balanced. For example, 8 points on the good side and 8 points on the bad side. So, when everyone has 4 dice on their board, you deal with this. And this is to determine the player order here. And maybe if you had too many numbers on the bad side of the scale, you lose points. I'll explain this later. After you've dealt with all of this, everyone puts the dice from their player boards back into the bag, and now you place new dice on the board and rearrange them. So again, when everyone has 2 dice on their own board, you turn the obelisk and place new dice. And when everyone has 4 discs on their board, you turn the obelisk. Deal with the scales to change the player order, and then you return all dice and place new ones on the board. But there is another phase. Yes, at some point, when you turn the obelisk, this little arrow on the disc will come to this token with the hourglass. In that case, you do all the other things. So, deal with the scales, but before you put the dice back into the bag, you have a little scoring moment in the game. You get points for everything that shows this hourglass on the game board and your own player board. I'll get back to that later. And when every player has scored their points, then you put the dice back in the bag, place new dice, and continue the game. Some good news, at some point when you turn the disc, this little arrow will reach this other token that shows 2 hourglasses. In that case, you do exactly the same. Deal with the scales and have a little scoring moment. And then the game is over. So, you have the first scoring moment when you reach this 1 hourglass, and the second scoring moment when you reach the 2 hourglasses. And then the game is over, you get some bonus points, and you'll have your final score. Let me give you a very quick recap. When you have 2 dice on the board, turn the obelisk and place new dice. When you have 4 dice on the board, turn the obelisk, deal with the scales, and place new dice. When you reach the 1 hourglass, you have the first scoring moment in the game. When you reach the 2 hourglasses, you have the second scoring moment, and the game is over. I'll explain more about that later, but at least now you know the flow of the game. Every player takes a turn, and then you check how many dice everyone has. If it's not 2 or 4 dice, you keep playing. If it is, you do something with the obelisk. Now, how do you play the game? What do you do when it's your turn? In short, that's very easy. You choose one of the dice and place it on your board. That's it. Pick a die and keep it. But of course, something happens when you do that. Let me start by explaining how you pick a die. All the dice that are on the inside showing this forbidden icon, that means you can't take it. Leave it where it is. If you choose one of the dice that is in the middle circle that shows this icon of the urn, you put it on the bad side of your own scale. It also shows the urn. And when you choose a die that is on the outside, where you see the icon of a feather, you can place it on the good side of your scale. You can also see a feather there. Don't forget, you have to try to balance the scale. Don't put everything on the good side, because that won't keep it balanced. But if you do, at least it won't cost you points. If you put too much on the bad side, that could cost you points. But anyway, when it's your turn, pick one of the dice and place it on your scale. Next, what can you do after you've taken one? You have 2 choices. You can either take resources, or you can do the action that goes with the area that you took the die from. I'll explain resources first. You can use the information sheet for help. When you take a white die, you can take the white limestone tokens. A black die is for granite, these ones. A yellow die is for these yellow paper tokens, papyrus. And the brown die will give you bread. You might already expect this, there are rules for that, but they're actually not that complicated. First, how many resources can you take? Easy. As many as the number of the die you took. If you took a 1, you can take 1. If you took a 2, you can take 2, and so on. If I pick a brown die with the number 6 on it, I can take 6 bread tokens from the supply. There's just one problem. You might not be allowed to keep as many resources as you take. For that, you also look at your own player board. For each resource, I have a track with a little cube in it. This shows how many of each resources I can keep when I take it. For example, my cube on bread is on space 3. That means I can keep 3 bread, but I took 6 tokens. So the other 3 tokens can go on the bad side of my scale. They count as 1 bad point per token. But that's it. When it's your turn, you can take a die to get resources. You can take the resources that go with the color of the die, and you can take as many as the number on the die, but you can only keep as many as your own player board indicates. There are also gray dice, but they have no resource connected to them. The other thing you can do when it's your turn is take one of the dice and do the action that is connected to the space you took it from. So, if you take a die from here, you do this. If you take one from here, you do this. From here to do this. This space lets you do this. Take from here to do this action. And this area goes with this action. You can also see the Egyptian gods around the obelisk to show you which action is which. Officially, it's called a god action. Let me go through the actions quickly. Do this action to place a building here, and then you can move your cubes up on your own player board. That lets you take more resources. This action lets you build a statue. You can either put it around the wheel for bonuses in the future, or put a statue in this area or this area to score points during those scoring moments in the game. Take a die from here to do this action, where you can put one of these tiles here on the temple and place your pillar on it for points later. The action of this area is build a house on these spaces around the temple. Then you can take resources and points, and it gives you more points later. The action of this area is pay 2 papyrus tokens, and then you go up in happiness. That's this little person on the track. And finally, if you take one of the dice from here, you can take cards. Some cards are instant bonuses. Some cards are bonuses that you can keep for the whole game. And some cards are bonuses when the game is over. Alright, those were all the actions. If you have enough of an impression of the game and you want to figure the rest out for yourself, you can stop watching the video here. And thank you for watching, of course. But if you'd like to know a little more, I'm happy to explain that to you. Let's go back to this first one, placing one of your own houses here to get more resources in the future. First, you take a die from this area. I took it from here, so I place it on this side of my scale. Then, the price to put a house here is go down one space with your happiness marker, the little meeple on this track. Done. Now I take my leftmost house from my board. I took this die with this number on it. Look at the board. Here's the same number. So I can place my house in this row. I can choose where. I'll put it here so I can move my cube up like the board indicates. And I can take this resource. Done. Here at the bottom you can see this with the hourglass. That always means points during that scoring phase when you reach the hourglass token around the obelisk. The player with the most houses in this column gets 3 points. And you do this for every column. In case of a tie, whoever is higher up wins. And you can build a statue here that is all the way at the top, so it always wins the tie. And it counts as 1 point for this column and this column. Same goes for this statue. But that's already it for this area. Next space on the board. Here. This lets you build a statue. The price for a statue is written on your own board. The first one costs you 4 granite tokens. Then you can choose if you want to place it around the obelisk on these spaces, or if you want to place it on the board. So here and here, like I just explained. And you can take the gold token, of course, or you can place a statue on one of these two spaces for points later in the game. But if you want to place a statue around the obelisk, you look at which die you took. Here is the overview. So if I took a die with the number 5, I place my statue here. Now, every time another player does this action, I get this bonus. In case you're playing with less than 4 players, you might get more. Check the rulebook for that. Moving on, this area with the tiles. First, check which tile you're allowed to take. That's based on which die you took. Then, pay the price. It's written at the top of the tile. Then, place it on one of the empty spaces on the temple to get points. 1. Get 1 point for each building in the same row and column, even if it's not your own. 2. Get 1 point for each matching color that matches this color and this side. So if I place this tile like this, I get 2 points. If you place the tile in the corner, you get 2 points per matching color. 3. Get the bonus that's on the space where you placed your tile on. 4. Get the points of the space where you took the tile from, so here, these points. 5. If the background of the tile happens to be the same as the color of the obelisk disc in this area for this action, you also get the bonus that is on the tile itself. Then place your own pillar on the tile. And the last thing you do is slide all the tiles to the right and place a new one from the stack on the free space. The next one, place a building on one of the spaces around the temple. You have to pay bread for that, and you have to pay as much as it says on the space where you choose to build your house. So if I want to place it here, that will cost you this much bread. Pay the tokens and place your leftmost building on this space. Now you can take the rewards. You get 1 token from each thing that you see in this row. Only 1. And if there happens to be one of your own pillars on these spaces, you get 3 points instead. So I get 1 of this, 1 of this, 3 points, and so on. You end this action by going up in population. If I had taken this die with this number on it, then my big meeple goes up this many spaces on this track. Let me insert a little side information here. Population doesn't do much, but you're never allowed to move your little happiness marker past the bigger population marker. So that's one reason to move it. And when your population marker reaches a section with another color in it, you can finally place cards on those sections here where you can take cards. The next action here. This is where you can move your little happiness marker meeple up. You go forward as many spaces as the number of the die you took. If it happens to be one of these numbers, you can also take one or two of these tokens. I'll explain those later, and they're good to have. Because first I want to tell you about this last action, taking cards. The first thing you can do is pay one papyrus token to remove all the cards from one section and place new ones. And after that, you can take cards based on the number on the die that you took from here. Taking 1 is free, taking 2 costs papyrus, taking 3 costs more papyrus. And you have to do that. You can't say that you took a die with a 6, but choose to take only 1 card. That's not allowed. And you can only take cards from the section where your little happiness marker is. Mine is here, so I can only choose between these cards. Then take what you're supposed to take, and done. Refill the empty spaces, and that was your turn. Done! We've gone through all the actions. I won't repeat them. Your information sheet says a bit about them as well as the board itself. Plus, you can always look it up in the rulebook. Let me get back to these scribe tokens. You can see on your own player board what they do. Spend 1 to change the number of the die you take by 1 or 2. So you could turn a 4 into a 5 or 6, or a 3 or a 2, whatever helps you the most. And if you spend 2 scribe tokens, you can do something very special. It's called the Anubis action. That means you can take any die from around the obelisk, even the ones in the forbidden area. And then you can take any action you like. You can take resources or do one of the board actions. You can take a die from here to do this action on the other side. It's up to you. The only thing that matters is the number on it. And you don't place this one on the good or bad side of your scale, but in the middle. That's what scribe tokens are for. Now I want to come back to the phases, the ones about turning the obelisk and placing new dice and maybe scoring or dealing with your scale. You might remember the first one. When everyone has 2 dice on the board, you turn the obelisk 1 space clockwise and place new dice. How many dice do you take from the bag? You take as many dice as there are players. If there are 3 players, you take 3 dice. You roll them and then place them in the shaded area, the middle space between sunny and dark. And then do it again. 3 dice for 3 players. Roll and place them in the other shaded area. And now you have to adjust them to the right space. You can do this together and you can look at the information sheet to see which die goes where. The grey ones are easy. They're always in the tainted zone that shows the urn. The next one, and maybe you remember it. When every player has 4 dice on their own board, you turn the obelisk, but before you place new dice, you all have to deal with your scales. That goes like this. 1. Look at your own scales. How many numbers are there on the good side, and how many numbers are there on the bad side? And don't forget that any resources that you aren't allowed to keep also go on this bad side. If you manage to get a 0, that's a perfect balance, and you leave it like that. If you don't have a perfect balance, and you have these tokens, you can place them on either side to make the balance better. They count as 1 point. 2. When every player is done, they place their little disc on the number of the balance that they have. Here is the 0. You have to try to get here. If your disc is on one of these spaces down here, you get minus points. 3. Return all the dice from your board to the bag. The resource tokens go back, and all these tokens also go back. Not just the ones you used, but also the ones that you didn't use. Your scale is completely empty, and you have none of these tokens left. 4. Place the discs back on this track. The player that was on 0 or closest to it can go on 1. The player that was the second closest to 0 can go on 2, and so on. 5. Return all these destiny cards, the one with the Ankh on it. The player on 1 can choose a new one first. Then the player on 2, and so on. You keep this card for now, and you get the bonus from the card. Done! If the arrow isn't with this hourglass token, you put new dice on the board and rearrange them. But if the arrow is pointing to the hourglass token, you have that scoring moment in the game. Remember, you always first do the token that shows 1 hourglass, and then later in the game, the one that shows 2 hourglasses. What do you get points for? One thing you already know, down here with the buildings. And you also have some things on your own player board that show points. For every cube that is all the way at the top, you get points. For every statue that you removed, you get points. And if you build a lot of houses, that also give you points. Then more on the game board. This temple area gives you points. Each building and statue that you have gives you 1 point. Each pillar that you have gives you 1 point for every house and statue that is yours in the same row and column. This track with your big and little person on it can also give you points. That's what these tiny triangles are for. This is how many points you get for them if your little happiness marker is far enough on the track. The last thing is this. Under the buildings you see bread. You have to pay as many bread tokens as you have freed up buildings on your own board. For every bread that you can't or refuse to pay, you lose 3 points. And that's it. You do this scoring twice per game. When you've done it the second time, the game is over. Then you have this one additional bonus scoring. You can get bonus points from these cards. You can score for up to 3 cards and not the same one twice. And if you're the player with the disc on space 1 here, you get points. And maybe player 2. Just see what the board says. All of this is written on the back of the rulebook. It's very handy. Feel free to look at it when any of this happens. But you are now at least very ready for a game of Tekhenu. I hope you feel very ready and that you'll enjoy it. Thank you for watching this tutorial all the way through. Feel free to leave a comment and see you for the next shorter one.